Hello everyone and welcome to a speed review of Odalin Dungeons of Doom by Dragori Games. At the time of posting this review, the campaign is live, so feel free to use the link in the description of this video to check out the campaign and see if this is something that you're going to want to back. I don't really know anything around price or offerings when it comes to pledges, so this is based just on the prototype gameplay that I have. Now there are a few things missing. For instance, I didn't fight any bosses or anything like that, and there's a few mechanics here and there that aren't quite fully fleshed out yet, but they are actively working on that. I know that because I got an updated rulebook midway through my playing sessions, so just as an FYI, this is of course a prototype. Now that being said, I still like to judge where a game kind of is, and the rulebook, while still in beta, needs some work, but overall is actually pretty good for a Kickstarter. At this point, I have played dozens and dozens and dozens of Kickstarter board game prototypes. This one is actually pretty good. Now, going into the actual gameplay, let's talk about setup a little bit. So this is kind of like an ARPG video game. So if you played like Diablo or Titan Quest or Torchlight, or there's a whole host of ARPGs. If you've played any of those or anything like that, then you kind of know what I'm talking about. You go around and you kill monsters, and then there's tougher monsters you have to fight. But at the same time, this is still very much an RPG dungeon crawl board game with a lot of other semblances as well. For instance, there are bonfires that you can fast travel to. So if that sounds a little Dark Soulsy, it's because it is. So there's a lot of inspiration to go from. So while I think it's laid heavily on the RPG, there's a lot more to this game than just that. Now, that being said, one of my favorite things, whether it's an RPG or just a regular RPG, when it comes to these dungeon crawl games, I love characters that actually act different. I don't want all of my character options to be more or less the same with just different flavors around the same kind of ice cream or whatever. I don't know what the analogy is, but suffice it to say, the characters here do act different, and I quite enjoyed a lot of the theming around each one. They all do various things, especially with their passive and their kind of special abilities, whether it's gaining protection or whether it's doing a lot of charges and backstabs and stuff like that, or even just healing. There are almost fully support characters that are available. That being said, I didn't see the same theming when it came to the demons. So in this game, you have your base character class, and then you actually pair a demon or a demonic power or demonic entity to that character, and then that creates your character. Think of it kind of like a character build in a traditional RPG. That being said, the demons, they're different, but I didn't see the same strong theming that I saw in the other ones. So while they do more or less things, it's just based off the cards, and then when you turn into a demon form, that's when you kind of get a little bit of that uniqueness, but it's just for one turn, so it's not like you strongly feel that. For the most part, the demon is just adding to your cards, and those are just adding abilities, and the abilities are cool, but not as strongly themed as those like abilities when you're in the form. But again, you only get that for a short period of time, so it's not as strongly felt throughout the entire gameplay. Now, one thing that is interesting is every character uses the kind of, I describe it as a berserker trait. If you've played a berserker in a lot of RPGs, you know the idea of hurting yourself. Sometimes a warrior's like this, or it's themed different ways, but it's a very common build, and that's you give up health to become stronger. And every single character does this because of the theme of the demonic entity and gaining corruption and then using corruption or anything like that. But a lot of it is health-based as well. And I thought that was kind of interesting. It definitely keeps the game going, so you don't just like constantly use your actions when you don't need to. You want to be efficient, but I don't really care for that theme personally. I never like playing a berserker or anything where I have to hurt my own health to be able to actually do something. And that's every single character. They all use this. It's a very common theme throughout the entire game because of the theme of the demonic power. I get why they did it, but it does have a unifying sense to all the characters, and it's not even one that I particularly enjoy. Now, that being said, I've talked about it a little bit here. The demonic form is awesome, and turning into the demonic form is awesome. Not only do you get the big honkin' miniature, the huge miniature that you're larger than everything else, suddenly you are bigger and you feel bigger, you feel stronger. That one turn is going to be huge, and you're going to stomp whatever it is you're attacking, and it feels really, really great to do it. So it's super awesome to be able to do that. That being said, the demonic ability, besides the passive, which is like a nice buff, is a one-time use in between like rests. So in between those bonfires, for instance. And that's kind of a bummer, just because I would like to use that more often. But I can understand why you don't, but it's the one time you truly feel like, oh my gosh, this is crazy, right? You're doing something really awesome. That being said, the buff is always very strong, and it just looks cool too. It feels great. It's pretty much going Super Saiyan, and I love it. Now, that being said, one of the nice things about the corruption gauge and stuff like that is if you get too high, you go into the demonic form, but you lose control and literally have to attack one of your teammates. Now, you can try and exert a little bit of control and attack the person you're going to do the least amount of damage to or that you're not going to kill, but at the same time, you have to kill or you have to attack somebody. And that's a really cool kind of scenario to be in, and really makes this feel a little bit different than a lot of the other games that I've played where, we have a whole lot of these straight co-op dungeon crawl games. And that adds a tiny itsy bitsy little bit where for a single round, you get to attack somebody else. And I like it. It sets it apart from the rest. It's a little bit of a differentiator. I really actually appreciate that. Though, again, know your group. Some groups may not like this at all. I can understand that. It just depends on the players. Now, it wouldn't be a great RPG, in my opinion, without equipment sets, and this game has it. Yes, actual equipment sets, and it's very, very cool. Now, one of the bummers is there are a lot of items, which is great. There's a lot of equipment, but it also means you're not going to always get a full set. That being said, there are partial set improvements that you can have, and I thought that was really nice as well. And there are ways and methods to like turn gear you don't want and transmute or whatever into new gear, and so there are still ways to continue to try and churn and get that cool set that you really, really want. There's also legendary equipment, and the legendary equipment, you are specifically told to go get this. It's very thematic when you get it, and it looks super cool. They look very, very strong. I didn't get a lot of experience with it with my game sessions, but suffice it to say, I looked through the cards, looks awesome. Now, it's pretty common to have melee weapons and ranged weapons and magic weapons and stuff like that in that differentiator, but there are versatile weapons here that I really appreciated because it means that both can use it. For instance, there's this cool scythe that either a magic user or a melee user can use that because, it's like a scythe, which kind of makes sense, right? It makes sense in a fantasy setting anyway. And I really liked the versatile addition to equipment. Now, one of the bummers I had is you're using all these actions and instants and these cards, and they have a name, they're fairly themed, but there is no art on them, and I'm a huge fan of having art with the actions. I don't think there's a way around this because of the card having two different actions. That's a lot of text, I get that, but a little bit of art would definitely go a long way. So I do wish there was art up because at the end of the day, all the cards look the exact same. It's blue and red constant, except for that one gold card. Speaking of which, that one gold card, very, very cool. It's 1 out of 10. You have 10 different cards. One of them is your like special super duper card, and it's a lot of fun to use every time you do it. Now, let's talk a little bit about not necessarily the story, but some of the mechanics involved here. So when you first start out, like in this mission that I started out in anyway, I like went up to this token that represented a like dying serpent person, and they like totally grabbed me, and I was not expecting that at all. Not only did they grab me, but like I couldn't get out of the grips with them. So suddenly all the other team members are like hitting on the guy and trying to get him to let go, and I'm trying to break free. And it was a very cool story thematic theme that then went into the gameplay itself, right? And it was a very smooth transition between the two. And that's one of the things I think Dragori Games does fairly well. They've done it since Daenerys, and that's put story and gameplay and mix them up. And so you have these small rooms, and you play the room, and in there you have a little bit of story, and then you go to the next room, you have a tiny bit of story, you play the mission, and then, or you play that room, and then and so as you clear rooms, you have story in between each time. So what I've shown in this video is going all the way to the first bonfire in this session that I had. And each room was separate, and there was a little bit of going back and forth, a little bit more story than just one per room. But at the same time, it was very much like a little bit of story, a little bit of gameplay, a little bit of story, a little bit of gameplay. A nice mix between that, which I thought was really nice. Now, there are riddles in this, like Tenaris as well, or even Arena back in the day if you've played that. So I really like the riddles. The one that was presented to me was fairly easy, got it first try. However, I know Dragori Games can make some really tough riddles as well. So if you like puzzles, RPG stuff like that, there's a lot of that in here. Now, I have a minor gripe here, but there's a balance track, and I don't like updating these tracks in these games. I don't know what it is. I don't like it when there's an initiative track or anything like that like moves when you do an action, because I don't like the upkeep attached to the action. For whatever reason, that bothers me. That's a personal pet peeve of mine, and I understand that, but it's present here. So, you'll use an action, and every time you do, guess what? That balance track is updating. And then you do it again, and then the balance track is updating. Now, it's not quite a one-to-one, because at some point you need multiple to be able to move it, so not everything will. But for a large part, sometimes you play one, and then people play instance, and you're just updating that more than I care. I like the balance track. It adds a lot of cool features there, but I do not like being the one to update it. Somebody else can take that. Another oddity, a little bit, at least in the current setup of it, there's a villain defeat bonus that they give like these souls, and that's just for people around them. So if you're ranged, you don't get that as much. And so it kind of disadvantages range, though obviously you're ranged, which can kind of help too. Though most of the enemies can move and attack anyway. So, it was a little oddity. I felt like as a ranged character, I wasn't benefiting from my kills in the same way. Another problem that I personally have, you're probably better at it than I am, but I have terrible dice luck. And I know that's haha funny, it's all random. You don't understand. I actually I roll it more often than not. So the green dice, so when you're first starting out, you typically get these green defense dice, and they are 50-50. Half of those, 3 of those positions are blank, and you would not believe how many times I roll 1 or 2 blanks over and over again. In fact, one of my characters that I played in a session had an ability to gain a green one, but I had to use the card to do it, and so I did it, and it was a waste. I got a blank anyway, so I don't even know why I bothered. You're gonna miss a lot of defense rolls early on. Now that gets better, obviously, with equipment, but starting out, my goodness, those blank defense, brutal. Now, one of the cool things about this, obviously, as you've seen, the art and the minis are fantastic. I think it's a beautiful game through and through. Even the prototype here looks really nice. With the dual card system, it means all your cards are automatically sleeved. Everybody gets those. There's no way around it. They got to be sleeved. And so it's just going to be a premium product. And I'm really excited about that. Looking at Dragori Games and what they've delivered before, I'm pretty pumped about it. I think this is going to look really, really great. So definitely top notch there. Now, the cards can be very powerful, and I really enjoy that. There are some huge power swings. You're doing basic, normal stuff where you're iterating on killing an enemy or something like that. But then there are even instant death cards where it's like, oh, hey, does it have less than 11 health? Boom, it's dead. And I love that. It feels so great to play those. So some of these are really, really good. Playing instants is also really fun. So you play an action to move and then attack on your turn, but outside of your turn, you get to play the bottom of the cards if you want. Those are called instants, and when you use those, it triggers based on something. So sometimes it's like, oh, hey, I'm just gonna charge in there and attack. So not only are you doing stuff on your turn, which is a lot of fun, but a lot of those are just really, really strong, really fun to do. And like I said, those instant death cards are super awesome. It feel great doing them. I love very, very strong swings in games because I love that power fantasy that it gives me. That's super in line with the ARPG style of game that this is kind of mimicking a little bit, and I really appreciated that. Now, one of the things that I didn't appreciate, and while it didn't happen in my game session, I saw the possibility, it's in the rules, and I want to mention it, and that's the fact that death means sitting it out. So, like, if you die, like, you don't get up until all the enemies are defeated. Now, that doesn't take too long. I said these rooms are small, but at the same time, it does mean you just nope out of there, right? There's no, oh, we're going to try and heal you or anything like that. Like, that's the time to go take a bio break, grab another drink, eat another slice of pizza, whatever it is that you want to do. Wait until your team finishes that, and then you can pop back up, right? And so, like, like I said, it didn't happen in my sessions here, but this is obviously limited. I imagine at some point it's going to happen. So just as an FYI, you need to be okay with that. No, that's fine. You know, I just, you know, lean back in my chair and talk bunch of crap about how people didn't help me. But, you know, that's because I like to blame my problems on others. You might have a different experience depending on how finicky you are around that. Now, speaking of those small rooms, set up super quick, super simple. I really enjoyed that. Besides your character with all your stuff, which again isn't too bad, the footprint of this game isn't that large. Assuming you do get rid of, you know, some areas more than others. Like, I don't know exactly how far this would go. Like I said, this is to the first bonfire, and I don't know how much you can remove old tiles, because you can, like, teleport there. Hopefully in the final game they have like whole map layouts or something like that, so you can like reset them up if they get too large. Again, I'm not exactly sure how that works, but as it is right now with this prototype, that's like everything that this prototype came with, which is the majority of, you know, everything you would see, and it doesn't take up a lot of space at all. Like, it could play just fine on a normal game table, not even like a super large one. So that's kind of nice. Now, speaking of traveling back, that's a real thing. That's something you do. You'll actually travel back to rooms because, you know, you might need to go get an item and then use that item in a different room or do something like that, or re-interact with a character that, you know, you left in a certain area. Or, you know, there's a large variety of reasons why you do that. And even in this small session, I was going back to previously visited rooms, and the game fully supports that. And that's cool. A lot of these dungeon crawls are forward always only. And so it was very cool to actually, you know, go to a farther room, do something there, and then come back. I really liked that. Finally, one last thing to note, and that's around solo play and lower player counts. It is definitely set up for 4. However, the solo and lower player counts, I think, work pretty well. They have an aimlet that allows you to kind of be buffed up, and you can multi-hand pretty easily. Honestly, it's not that bad. You don't have huge hands of cards or anything like that. So I have no problem playing multiple characters, for instance. So yeah, it's not terrible. So I was pretty happy with it. Anyway, guys, that's my thoughts after playing through the whole prototype that they offered me. So this is several sessions here where I was able to sit and play. I didn't quite do it all in one, but either way, I had a lot of fun with it. And yeah, if you have any questions, of course, comments down below. Link down below to the campaign page, so you can go check that out, of course. And yeah, I don't know. This was a fun one for me. I'm definitely interested in this. And depending on the pledging and the price, definitely interested in backing it myself. I know I had a lot of fun with it. The theme's cool. It looks great. It plays really fun. I'm excited for it. Anyway, that's it for this review. Again, if you liked the video, do give it a like if it helped you at all. I do so much appreciate it. Thank you guys so much. Have a great rest of your day. Take care. Bye, guys.